All right, all right, all right, all right. We are live. No, it's not my first time late. No, 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 no. Stream delay. It's a stream delay. I'm not late. Welcome, everybody. This is episode 162 of Calibrated with Scott. I am, of course, your host, Scott. I appreciate you all being here. It has been about a week since my last live stream. I think that's kind of like the right amount of time right now in between live streams. If I'm doing them more than that, it just feels a little rushed. I like to do about an hour's worth, so that's kind of where I feel like it's good right now. If it picks up, I might be doing more. Um, but good evening, everybody. It's good to see everybody back here. Thank you for joining me. Remember, I like to see where everybody is from. And don't forget, if you are new here, please consider clicking that subscribe button. If you are old here, you already know you should go and leave a like and leave a comment. Do the things that make the community better and stronger. And other than that, how's everybody doing today? It's been just over a week. I think my last one was on Thursday. Obviously, we got the homies here from Pakistan. How are you doing? Resident, you changed your name now. Ooh, lovely. Serbia, nice. Florida, nice. Bulgaria, ba ba ba. Cheers, can't complain. Welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. I'm just letting everybody sort of file in. Usually, when I go live, I give it like 2 minutes before we actually start really getting into everything. Hopefully, everybody is doing good. Let's see. The Russian MOD says they took Perdichi, south of Chasiv Yar. You do not have that marked. Do you think Russia has that town? No, I'm pretty careful with any MOD claims in general. The Russian MOD used to be fairly delayed, actually, on announcing the capture of places. But as of recently, I think that there are sometimes assaults that go into areas. It appears as though they've been captured, and then the MOD will make some sort of claim like they have been captured. And yeah, so I just would not listen to the MOD right now for that sort of information. There is a possibility that it's been captured, but I wait for geos. I wait for multiple source confirmations before I just go with something. Some mappers you'll see they'll just follow what the MOD says. Sweden, nice, nice, nice. Guten Tag from Argentina. Guten Tag, my good friend. Hello from the USA. Hello. Awesome, guys. Awesome, awesome, awesome. It is good to see everybody in here today. As you can tell, episode 162, but as you can tell from the title, we have the keeping Ukraine in the fight is sort of like the overarching idea of today's conversation, I guess, outside of the map updates and outside of other things that we'll talk about. We have just a tiny bit of news from the Middle East, but most important right now is what's going on just outside of Ukraine politically in Europe and in the United States. So I'm actually going to take us over to an article, and I'm just going to read some of an article. So that is how we are going to start this, and then after we get through this initial thing, then we'll get into some of the map updates. Trump is the biggest scam in history. No, he's not. He is a U.S. politician playing the uniparty game, and he's actually really good at it. This is the thing that a lot of people don't understand: is you're buying it. You might not be buying it as much anymore, but half of the people bought it originally, so sold already. It already worked. And even now, people are still doing these mental gymnastics to defend his position, and it's not a scam because it was clear what was going to happen from the start. Everybody just wanted to believe it and chose to believe it instead of understanding what the reality of a given situation was. All right, all right, all right. Here we go. Over to Politico today for our first article. And there's a couple of these that are kind of read the same. I'm not going to read them all. I'll show you some other titles, but this is from Politico. Very pro-Ukrainian position most of the time. Usually, they went very hand in hand with the Biden administration. So everything the Biden administration was doing, Politico was always supporting it, and when it came to Ukraine and stuff like that. So just so you guys understand, Trump weighs new Ukraine aid package. The administration's first military assistance to Ukraine would come after a controversial halt in weapons to Kyiv. So it wasn't really controversial, right? It wasn't really a controversial halt. It was just a halt. That's all it was. Nothing controversial about it. That's the bias. So just so you guys can, like, for your own reading purposes, picking up on bias right there. Controversial halt. No, it was just a halt. But if you add the word controversial, it makes it seem like now he's going back on it. It might be sort of a good thing. So President Donald Trump is weighing a new military aid package for Ukraine worth hundreds of millions of dollars, according to two people familiar with the plan. The first potential aid sent by the administration to the Belgorod country, Beluged. I've never actually read that word out loud before. We're going to skip it. Skip words. The discussion comes about a week after the Pentagon blindsided many in the White House by abruptly halting part of an existing aid package with thousands of artillery rounds and precision ammunition. Trump has said that aid would resume. A new weapons package, which senior Republican lawmakers have sought, would underline the administration's internal divisions over Ukraine's assistance in its battle against Russia. As its battle, against Russia grinds on to past a third year. Okay, I'm going to stop reading there. Got a little overwhelmed right there with that reading. But the the important aspect of this is Trump is pushing the weapons through Ukraine, through Europe to Ukraine. I've talked about this for months. This has been the plan ongoing, right? The situation now in the Middle East has sort of wrapped up momentarily. Again, a temporary sort of ceasefire deal that doesn't really work in any degree, but the Israelis are not attacking the Iranians. The Iranians are not attacking the Israelis. There is some freedom now to send things to Ukraine and less pressure on the overall system, right? And this is what I talked about when you talk about getting bogged down in places like Iran. Like, I think that the U.S.'s plan with Iran, the Israeli attacks on Iran, followed by the U.S. attacks, were planned out months in advance. This was always going to be the plan. But I think that there are, even within the larger scoped idea, there are internal divisions that pull and want things to happen sooner rather than later. Or, somebody's under more pressure. Maybe the Israeli political side is under more pressure than the U.S. political side. So they go ahead with a plan ahead of time that may or may not catch the U.S. off guard. There's a lot of different things going on. And I believe everything that has happened with Iran happened way too early, or everything that's going on with Ukraine has drug on way, way too long. Probably the latter. Ukraine is probably interrupting the plans with Iran and the plans to pivot to the Pacific. But as you can see, the plan is still the same. They're going to continue arming Ukraine against the campaign promise that Trump made. One of his major running points was that he was going to end the war in 24 hours, and if he could not end it, he was going to pull U.S. support. That has not happened. It is not going to happen. I'm going to take you over to another article just to show you the titles of these, just so you guys can kind of get a good feel. So this is from Fox. Trump reveals NATO sale to boost arms to Ukraine as Putin launches overnight maternity hospital strike. Oh my goodness, could we get any more ridiculous with these titles? I cover this war top to bottom, and I don't know what maternity hospital strike they're really even talking about. I did not see anything catastrophic, nothing significant. I have no idea what they're referring to. In fact, the scene that they're playing in this video on Fox are Garand 2 drones hitting, I believe, an airfield, potentially a military industrial facility like the Antonov plant. But most important here is European allies prepare to purchase U.S. arms for Kyiv as President plans major statements on Russia. So here we are, back to where we were under the Biden administration. We're going to see the continued 500 drawdown or $500 million drawdown aid packages, the logistics packages, as I have been calling them, that we have really not stopped. They haven't stopped. They've just been getting pushed through Europe. But even Europe now can't deal with this. So the U.S. has to come back in and say, okay, here, we're going to sell you these weapons. This is why we wanted to boost every NATO country's defense spending to 5%, so you guys can take over for us in Ukraine. Here is the division of labor. The U.S. will continue arming the conflict, but it's not coming out of taxpayer money. However, this is coming out of the Biden drawdown, the $3.8 billion pool that they have of drawdown equipment. So all of this is coming from current U.S. stocks, further putting a dent in our surplus and our just our strategic depth, really. Our ability to do things like defend Israel if another barrage of missiles or another 12-day conflict comes about. Our ability to defend any of our assets in the Pacific. It's just constraining everything more and more. And really, if you were an enemy of the United States, you would be looking at this and saying, well, they're overextended, right? The U.S. is shown very clearly that it can't even defend itself against Iran in the Middle East, right, with its air defense capabilities. I actually have a satellite image of the U.S. base in Qatar that was struck by an Iranian missile. So of the 14 Iranian ballistic missiles that were fired, one got through and struck a high-value target at one of the U.S. military bases. So again, kind of shows the inability of the U.S. to actually defend itself and its assets in the region. And not only in that region, but you must remember that all of the surplus that was used to protect Israel and being sent to Ukraine is coming from other theaters. The artillery shell surplus in South Korea has been entirely depleted. The global air defense, the Western global air defense stockpile has been wildly depleted, like THAAD interceptors, Patriots, like PAC-2, PAC-3, all of that is worth more than anything else on the market right now because there are just so few of them available. So I actually have a post here to specifically show how dire the air defense interceptor surplus is looking like. Okay, so this is from Axios. Two sources said that Trump promised to immediately send 10 Patriot interceptors, fewer than had been planned in the paused shipments, and help to find other means of supply. 10? Do you guys know how many Iskanders Russia fires at Ukraine daily? Somewhere between 5 and 10 to 15, usually. In a day, we'll usually see around 10, I would say, is a good baseline average. The rule of thumb with interceptors, if you're firing a Patriot interceptor at a ballistic missile, is you fire 2 interceptors per target. So this would be enough for 5 Iskanders, basically a half of a day's worth of interceptors to protect all of Ukraine. This is the reality of the supply situation for these missiles. Our production numbers are so low, and the expenditure rate has been so high between Ukraine and Israel that it's getting really, really bad. And this it just screams to such a larger systemic issue that the U.S. is facing. And like I said, if you were an enemy of the United States, if you were China, if you were Russia, now is not the time to let up the pressure, right? I'm going to actually get rid of this. I didn't even see that that was still up. This is now the time to get rid of, to not let up on the pressure, because they've gone to their max extent. Like they've gone as far as they can go offensively against you. You've survived it. Now you have to look at what's next and what position do you want to be left in when the whole thing is settled, right? China is not even actively a part of this, but they fully understand that they're next. The US is openly telling them that they're next. The Russians have been a clear microcosm for what will happen to them in the near future. It's very clear that the same thing is happening with Iran. So we've put ourselves in this very overextended, very bogged down geostrategic position. And yet, I think that the lack of our own casualties, the lack of our own skin in the game, because everybody else is fighting for us. Right now, it's just fake money and talking points and nonsense, right? Nobody really grasps what is happening and where everything is headed. But we're putting ourselves in this position, and it's almost more dangerous that we're doing it in that way, because now we think, well, we're not taking any of the hits anywhere, right? Let's just keep giving this stuff away. It's okay. They're fighting our enemy over there. We don't have to fight them over here. Keep printing, keep pushing. And then eventually something's going to happen, and we're going to need artillery shells. Something's going to happen. We are going to need air defense interceptors. Something's going to happen, and we are not going to have what we need to have to defend our interests around the globe. And this is why you don't undertake multi-year proxy wars against a country that has much better military production than you. It just doesn't make sense. So yeah, this is sort of we're back to the Biden era $500 million to $1.2 billion aid packages every couple weeks. Expect HIMARS strikes to resume. Expect we could see things like ATACMS show up. Who knows? We don't know how many of those are even left to send. So there's a number of possibilities. Be on the lookout for an analog Taurus missile. So like a Ukrainian-built Taurus. That's also potentially on the horizon as well. This war is nowhere near ending. It was never going to end. I told you the entire time that this war was not going to end. The way that anybody had been talking about, people had been talking about a peace deal, this, that, or the other. It was all bullshit the entire time. It's all theater. Even the fight that they had in the Oval Office, I almost guarantee you that that was just constructed theater. I don't think that it was earnest or honest. I think that you have actors on both sides, and it's what they do best. So that's that. But let's get into some map updates, shall we? We got a question here. Is the aid resumption just business as usual? New boss is the same as the old boss, or did the CIA tell Trump Ukraine could collapse soon? Probably all of the above. I mean, it is business as usual. It is continuity of agenda for sure. But maybe they actually thought Ukraine was going to be a little bit more stable than they are. I also think that Ukraine actively lies to U.S. intelligence. So the U.S. intelligence is only working off the best baseline intelligence that they're given by the Ukrainians. All right. Over to the map. The map. We are going to start in the very south, where Russian forces have captured the majority of the village of Kamyanske. I don't know where the township actually ends. It might be along this road, so the whole village might not be completely captured, but a majority of it is. And this is not a water barrier right here. It is drained out, so this is just dry open land, like a dry lake bed right here. So this entire area is now under Russian control. Important not for strategic reasons. I mean, it does bring them slightly closer to the city of Zaporozhye, but most importantly, it just shows that the Ukrainian lines are weakening across the board, and as those lines weaken, again, you're going to see advances in areas where the Russians are not particularly pushing very intensely. I've talked about this before in my last episode, but some areas of this front, according to Ukrainian sources, 5 kilometers are defended by 10 to 12 men at times. So there's huge gaps, there's opportunities. The difficulty is staging, obviously, for the Russians, but you will begin to just see areas like this just get enveloped and taken by the Russians. All right, moving over to the Holyai-Polye front, Russian forces have advanced out of Melanivka towards Holyai-Polye down this road. As I had talked about, the Russians will probably do the exact same thing they did over here in Velika Novosilka, where they got into the villages to the west and down the road right here, and then pushed up into Velika Novosilka, which had a water barrier and kind of offered them a good area to push. Holyai-Polye is a little different, doesn't have as much of a water barrier in directly like cutting it in half. There is a slight river that runs through it, but again, not a major water barrier like Velika Novosilka has. So it will likely be more defensible by the Ukrainians, but just a good indicator of what is going to come in this direction. Continued advances towards the village of Holyai-Polye. All right, moving up to the Velika Novosilka, just north of Velika Novosilka now. Actually, it's quite north. I didn't realize how north it is now. Yeah, damn, 30 kilometers. To the north of Velika Novosilka, just near the Dnepropetrovsk Oblast, Russian forces have made some significant progress on the western edge or the western bank of the Vovocha River here, capturing the villages of Hershevske, Tolstoy, Pendumbny, and Mirne. So 4 villages again right here. And just for you guys, a little upcoming prediction. The Vovocha region here, much like the last region we saw in this area, which is now fully under Russian control. I predicted it when the Russians were back here at Bahatir, that they were going to push up to these river lines, is now back over here. So this is the back half of the Vovocha River in this location, runs up around just south of Ivanivka, and then down to the area of Shevchenko. So this is the next sort of push out that you will see from the Russians, as the Russians are going to now control most of the dominant high ground and will begin to force the Ukrainians behind that river line. So again, we will see another sort of flank develop, just like we did down here around Deshane. We'll see another flank develop just south of Ivanivka, and then they will push probably across the river north to Novopavlivka and close this entire pocket over here. So it's not likely that you will see a push up here towards Mezova, as this side of the line seems much stronger. This southern area appears much, much weaker for the Ukrainians. Where did all the Ukrainian soldiers go? Nobody in Western media asked that question. Yeah, they don't care. They don't care. They don't talk about guys getting beat up and thrown into vans. They don't talk about anything that doesn't perfectly fit the narrative. So, all right, moving to the Pokrovsk direction. Pokrovsk is finding itself in a much worse position daily. Especially this northeastern flank is beginning to experience severe trouble. I'm seeing a lot of videos of logistics being interrupted. I'm expecting very soon that the Russians will either move into this gas station sort of labeled area right here, the south of Minhorod, or move into this area in the south of Pokrovsk rather shortly, just because of how tight the logistics in this area are going to be and how large the area is to defend. So over here, Russian forces have just leveled out the front along the Kazirny Torets River, and have pushed into the village of Mykolivka. So this, again, is just a lot of pressure on the outside of a town. They don't necessarily need to capture the town right away, as the Ukrainians will continue to push themselves into a tightening noose over and over again. I don't understand it, but the inability to back up from any area at any cost is beginning to really weigh heavy on the Ukrainians, and they aren't even being successful in those endeavors anymore. So as soon as this pocket closes, and as soon as the Russians enter into Novo Ikomenice, this village right here, the village, the city, the conglomerate of Minhorod and Pokrovsk is going to be in a much worse off position. Yeah, it's getting very, very tight, and like I said, the Ukrainians are holding on desperately to this side, because as soon as this falls and the Russians get ease of access along the T0504, they're going to just be able to push right into the eastern edge of Minhorod, and then the battle for the city begins. And all of this back behind really doesn't matter as much. The second the Russians can break in and get through this line right here and into the city, all of that doesn't matter nearly as much. All right, moving up to Costanifa. Here, the Costanifa front. Here in Yablanivka, to the north of the, what river is this? The Bychok River? The Bychok River. Just north of the Bychok River, Russian forces have advanced through these two fortifications in this area and have captured half of the northern portion of the village. Again, the goal here, the end game goal, is to reach this ring road, which is surrounded by fortifications. It sits upon the high ground. Once this is captured, the Russians will have dominance over like this entire region here. So this is the primary objective right now. This movement is very important to the Russians. Moving to the south, over by the Toretsk front, Russian forces have advanced along this river bed right here and this reservoir, and have reached the southern edge of Kalibraed, again putting the Ukrainians in this ever-tightening pocket in a much worse situation in the coming weeks. I mean, like days. If progress continues the way it has continued, it should be days. But the way things work, probably weeks, we will see this pocket close up along the reservoir, and this prediction will be almost entirely complete. All right. Moving up to the Siversk area, Russian forces have advanced along the Siversky Donetsk Canal into the village of Sherbyanka. Remember that this area is on the low ground and is very difficult to hold, so the Russians could be rolled out of this position back over here to Hyorivka. It's a possibility, and the primary objective for the Russians in this area is just capturing the rest of these tree lines and the dominant high ground on this position, and then the battle for Siversk should begin. Moving up to the Leman front here, not much movement in the Toretsk area. In the Torsk situation area, my God, I don't know what's happening today. I'm just stumbling all over my words, so I'm sorry, guys. It hasn't been the best live stream. I do apologize. I will try to do better. But moving up here, slightly to the north, more in the Izum direction, Russian forces have completed the capture of Zelina Dolina and have moved down from Kaprivka towards the Leman area. So again, another important advance here, just putting pressure on this entire front, forcing the Ukrainians to move a lot of forces in here to hold this entire line now, which, remember, used to just kind of be back here and held by the Zhibiets River. No longer. Now the Russians have a very stable bridgehead and are now pushing on the entire northern flank of Leman. Leman is a major summer objective that I do expect the Russians to push very, very hard for. Remember, the capture of Leman closes up the Srbiansky forestry and makes the capture of Seversk much, much, much more obtainable. All right, slightly to the north, Russian forces have advanced in the direction of Barova, along these tree lines just to the north of Borisivka and Drivka, right here along the Oskil River. Again, not as much movement, honestly, as I was expecting in this area. I was expecting the Russians to push a lot more along the Oskil River region and try to just get the Ukrainians back behind the river line. I still feel as though this area is extremely vulnerable. And if the Russians were to focus on this area, they would be able to push out to this line and then let it sit. Although I do not know the overall tactical situation, so I can't say that they're necessarily doing something wrong. But there are a few areas like that where I feel like the Russians could be pushing much harder and achieving a lot more success just because of how weak the Ukrainians are in specific areas. We're seeing it in Zaporozhye. We're seeing it. We're seeing it along the Costanifa area where they should be much stronger here. This is a very vital area to hold, and the fact that they lost this so quick in this garbage area of the front is pretty indicative of what's going on. But again, there seems to just be this Russian agreement within their own ranks where they're just going to go very slow and take their time and annihilate everything in front of them, which is fine. But in my opinion, I think that there are some specific areas like this area of Kupiansk that could be captured by the Russians, and then those forces that are dedicated there for the Russians could be moved to put pressure on other areas of the front where the Ukrainians are even weaker, because they have a lot of defense. These areas are not necessarily weak, but the skeleton crews holding those areas are weak, and that can be exposed. But again, I don't know every single tactical situation across the front, so that this is just a more broad, generalized statement and not talking about specific areas. Scott, did you see Ukraine's terrorist attack on a 5-story apartment building in Kherson today? No, I did not. At this point, that sort of stuff just doesn't really, I don't know. It doesn't register anymore. I don't. It's a war. I don't think it matters. We've seen how gentle the war in Ukraine is. Even the worst terror attacks we see are nothing compared to like a Tuesday in the Middle East. So it's kind of hard for me to like get super even interested in like random little attacks and stuff that don't need a lot of investigative work. They struck a civilian building. Okay, it's like what are you gonna do? All right, moving up, and this is a more impactful. This is part of what I was talking about with these areas that are very weak, where the Russians can push. And I had talked about this, and I was going to show you guys a post that I made on Twitter because I could not find it last time, but I did find it. Russian forces had previously advanced across the line, the border contact line here, into the village of Milove, captured said village, and have now expanded greatly around it. This is exactly what I talked about in my post. I'm going to go over to my Twitter now and show you guys so you can see it. So right here, you can see the high ground, and the road that I'm following here is Vovchansk. Here is Kupiansk down here. So this was the bridgehead at the time. The bridgehead now goes all the way up here. I can take us over actually to this post so you can see it a little bit better on the map version. And I'll make it big. So right where I talked about the Russians coming in across the border and then moving into, so staging in Voluki and I can't even read that. Half the letters are cut off. But this city up here, because there are two large train depots in both of these villages or cities, towns, the Russians could then use these roads that are already here to just stage and advance quickly into this area. And as we can see over here, the Ukrainians do not have the easiest supply situation, as the Seversky Donetsk River is quite wide up towards Vovchansk and then down back. And the only real connection to this entire area is through Chudahiv and bridges along the Seversky Donetsk right here. So this entire pocket right here looked very susceptible to me, with the goal obviously being this village right here marked in red in the middle. I don't know if the Russians are going to come in along this northern route or down from Vovchansk. These are just the options. But the fact that they're moving in along Milove here kind of shows that this is exactly what I had been talking about, and you can sort of see the what the Russian idea is going forward. I think that they're going to try to take most of the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast now, most of the Kharkiv Oblast, most of the Sumy Oblast, probably most of the Chudahiv Oblast. So you were going to have to wait for those. Those are going to take some time to see. But I think that the overall Russian objectives have now shifted. And as I talked about, before they entered Dnipropetrovsk, we did not know if they were going to do so. We didn't know if it was going to be a political decision to stay on the outside. That political decision seems to have been made. And the same goes for Kharkiv, where we're seeing additional entrances into the region, and Sumy in the same way. So, all right. Made myself tiny. Do you as an American have any sort of reaction when you see Ukrainian soldiers having U.S. patches on their uniform, knowing that they are only proxies? No, I think it's actually the one good thing that happens in the war. I think that if you supply arms, if you supply weapons, if you're making money off the blood, if you are doing anything of that sort, your logo, your identification should be all over it. I think that every single Ukrainian soldier should have a US patch on. I think that makes perfect sense. I think they should have a British patch, a German patch, a French patch. Anybody that they get aid from, that they should have to sponsor them, and their action should be directly linked to those nations. So all of Azov, everything that Azov does, is also what America does. No, I think that's the best thing. I guess that's my reaction. Is good. Keep wearing those patches. Make sure everybody knows who you're fighting for and what you're doing. I think that's the best way. I don't care, dude. I'm so disillusioned by the U.S. political system at this point. After this whole Jeffrey Epstein thing, they're all pedophiles. So I don't care. I really just don't care anymore. The reason why they don't come out with that list is, one, I think they're protecting Israel, because I think Jeffrey Epstein was a Mossad agent. I think that he was working a honeypot operation for Mossad. I think that they're protecting Israel in the same way that they're not releasing a lot of other files from U.S. history for specific reasons related to Israeli relations. I think that along with that, I think that almost every single person of power or celebrity or anything in the United States is on that client list, or has been on that plane, or has done something like that. So if you're going to release that list, you are just going to arrest everybody, or nobody. That's sort of the deal. I think it would have very severe economic impacts, and I think it would make the entire U.S. Political and elite class look like exactly what it is. So yeah, I have zero faith in our political apparatus. Your vote doesn't matter. You're voting for a uniparty. The only thing you can do is something radical, I guess. I don't know what you're supposed to do. I don't want to get kicked off of YouTube for saying crazy stuff. Kharkov is a massive million-plus city. Do you believe encirclement of the city can occur? Can this unfold with Russia's current Kharkov offensive? No, not with their current Kharkov offensive, not with the current manpower allotted. The city is far too big, but as the Ukrainian army gets weaker and weaker, yes, absolutely. Especially if they get embroiled in heavy battles around Pokrovsk or something, and the Russians have a lot of extra manpower and they just surround Kharkov. That is a very real possibility that that could happen. If lines break anywhere, any city, anywhere could be surrounded immediately. Like you might not, it might not look like it, let's just say the Russians start a bridgehead in Kherson, right? They get 20 kilometer or 50, let's say 20 mile, like 40 kilometer bridgehead. They have some safety. They don't have ease of anything. But the Ukrainians are just so weak in that area that they break, and then the Russians are able to stomp all the way through to Nikolaev, right? That can just happen. And I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I'm saying even areas where you would not think, oh, the Russians are going to be able to do anything here. They haven't been fighting here that long, whatever. If a line snaps and stability is lost, things can happen very quickly. So cities can be surrounded, cities can be captured like that. You could wake up tomorrow in a completely different reality. It happened in Syria, right? Literally, it happened in Syria. So, thank you for your questions. I did have a few things that I wanted to show you guys in my bookmarks here. So, a few events that happened recently. I'll start with Ukraine. Something that we have not seen, but is very notable. Here we had go away, so I can read, please. In Kyiv today, Colonel Ivan Voronich, who held the position of senior operative officer in the first department of the 16th Directorate of the Center A of the SBU, was killed. He was shot 5 times by a suppressed pistol. The assassin fled the scene. He was responsible for sabotage operations inside of the DPR and inside of Russia. It is highly likely that Russian intelligence was involved. You can see there. I'm not going to that video, but they did admit that this event did happen. So this would be one of the few known cases I've seen of Russian intelligence potentially doing targeted assassinations inside of Ukraine and inside of Kyiv. So that's a particularly interesting event to note of. Now moving over to the Middle East, satellite imagery reveals that Iranian ballistic missiles destroyed a rad dome at the U.S. Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. Here we can see the before and the after is coming in just a second, and you will see the dome was severely damaged. And this is the dome in question here. And here is the inside, what is inside of the dome, the giant array inside of the dome. So, again, a single missile struck and a high-value target was hit inside of the dome. Yeah, radar, early warning, communications. They do a lot of different stuff with those domes. Did you see the Delta program get hacked by Russia? No, I did not. Send me a link on one of my socials, and I'll read about it if you have something. Do you think both Russia and Ukraine have deliberately targeted civilians? You don't know what is every drone missile target, and who knows what military. I think that it's very clear that both sides, both Ukraine and Russia, have been actually fairly good about targeting military targets throughout the majority of this war, surprisingly enough, for all of the propaganda going around. There are individual units in the Ukrainian military who strike Donetsk. They have for over a decade. There are units that take their ill wills out on civilians. That happens. But to be fair, there's also Russian drone units in Kherson that will drop a grenade on everything that moves. Uh, the military are dressed like civilians. They drive civilian cars. So the Russians will just drop grenades on everything. And civilians are definitely dying in Kherson to Russian drone drops like that. So, you know, the deliberate targeting, when you say things like deliberate targeting of civilians, every war, there's going to be deliberate targeting of civilians. Now, what sort of, you know, context is that in? Are you not allowing food into a city that you control every single border of and are bombing with JDAMs? They don't have an air force and the population is 50% under the age of 18. Like, have you hit 94% of hospitals and control all of the electricity that goes in? Because then, like, that's deliberately targeting civilians, right? You're going after the civilians because the civilian population is in your way. Most of the Ukraine and Russia war happens tens of miles, hundreds of miles away from most civilians. Most of these cities that are on the front lines are not overly occupied. There's not a ton of civilian casualties. And really, the highest period of civilian casualties was right at the beginning and then during Mariupol, where they were surrounded and being used as shields. So, outside of that, we've actually seen a pretty gentle war. This has been a very soft, friendly, non-genocidal, not a lot of hate. Like, I saw worse things in Armenia and Azerbaijan in a shorter period of time than I've seen in Ukraine. So, Kalibraed. If Israel say in a scenario defeats Iran and their proxies, who Israel aim to destabilize next? They've said Pakistan, but uh, it's more about just maintaining control and keeping it chaotic. I don't think that they necessarily I don't think they need to go to destabilize anybody. It's if somebody's getting close to a point where they can uh, create deterrence against Israel is going to take the adversary down. That's sort of the deal. So whoever decides that they're going to be the next big dogs in the Middle East, that's who they're going to go after. In a year or so, do you see a Russian blitzkrieg starting again? Nope. Nope, nope, nope. Ukraine is getting weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker. You're just going to see the Russians doing the exact same thing and it yielding greater and greater results every time. It already is. The Russian casualties have gone through the floor. We hardly see Ukrainian artillery operating anymore. It's getting worse and worse for the Ukrainians. What's getting boring? The Ukraine conflict? I agree. I agree. They should just end it. They should just sign a peace deal and just get it over with. I agree. Sometimes war isn't entertaining. I think the major statement was that he's just going to be sending that 500 million in air defense and whatnot. So I don't think there's going to be any major statement. I don't think there's a major statement to make. What do you think about the claim that Russia lost 100K deaths alone? Yeah, no, it's just fake. That's just fake. I mean, you can look at Mediazona. Mediazona hasn't seen a spike at all in their reporting of obituaries. So, I mean, open source doesn't agree with that. That's just a fake number thrown out. Whatever. Whatever. Probably projection, honestly. If you want to actually know what it is, it's probably just projection. That's what I just assume now. Anytime anybody says any sort of numbers that aren't like backed up by anything, they just throw out a number. I just assume it's something comparable to what the Ukrainians lost. So that's the acceptable ratio. It's like, oh, the Ukrainians lost 100,000, so the Russians lost 100,000, sort of deal. Like, that's just where my brain goes. I'm not saying that's what it is, but yeah, that's ridiculous. There hasn't been enough fighting. There hasn't been big enough battles for 100,000 people to die. We haven't seen any large, significant offenses. Assaults are very small and tactical in nature. It doesn't even make sense. Do you think Iran-Israel deal is done? No, absolutely not. They're already talking about it not being done. No, 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 no. But I do think they realize that Iran is not going to be as easy to push over as they thought it was going to be. I think that they thought that the domestic situation was going to get a lot worse, and instead there was just an insane rally around the flag that was not expected, and that does not bode very well when you have 90 million people in a country that doesn't really like the country with 11 million people. It's just the numbers aren't working there. So they're going to continue to try to overextend, sow internal division. Mossad is going to continue doing their thing, assassinating people, whatever. No, do not expect it to be anywhere near over. Just like Syria. Syria wasn't over. Even if it's stable for 5 years, the goal is still regime change. The goal is still control, right? It's not going to end. It never ends. The deals are never done. There are no deals. We just make deals just so that you don't do anything while you think we're making a deal with you. Hey Scott, do you predict a full offensive by Russia into Kharkov or Sumy or Chernigov, or Russia trying to start a schism? No, I think that like I said, the Russians are. I don't even think that the Russians are thinking about the Ukraine war in the same way as you guys are anymore. I think that the Ukraine war is just what's going on while the Russians are getting for the next real fight. The Ukraine war is continuing. It is important. They're still paying attention to it, but it's more about the industry back home. It's more about what the Russian next step is. It's more about where are things going, because the Ukraine fight is not as important now as when the Ukraine fight started. It wasn't even the most important aspect. The most important aspect was the Russian economy. If the Russian economy survives, the military is going to keep fighting, right? That was like the whole deal. Was Russia invades, we sanction them. The sanctions didn't work the way we wanted. The economic pressure wasn't there the way we wanted. The Russians are now winning in Ukraine because they are achieving that. They had that economic success, and now their military is completely up to par with most modern militaries around the world, if not far exalted past them. So, yeah, there's a lot going on, but I would not predict any full offensive anywhere. Again, I think the Russians are just going to take what they can get. If the Ukrainians give them an inch, the Russians will take a mile if it's there for them. But I don't think you're going to see anything like 2022 ever again. It doesn't make sense. Question: when will there be a breakthrough with FPV drone defenses for troops? Good question, man. I think that with fiber optics, it makes it very hard. I think basically the point you're going to have to get to is when you have something that's like this big that's attached to your back. You have like 4 of them that you carry on your rucksack or whatever. And when a signal goes off, they're like little guardian angels. They pop off. They have a little battery life. They don't last very long. But if something gets within like 2 kilometers of you, this thing gets set off, triggers, and goes and hunts it. And that is what protects you. So like drones to counter the drones, but like very tiny, affordable ones. I think that would be that's the end game, is just having guardian drone systems is the only way I can explain it, because outside of that, I don't know how you're going to make something cost effective and efficient. Like a shotgun is really cool, right? But you can miss with the shotgun and then you're just dead. So thank you. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, EMP. Yeah, that's right. I mean, if we're going there, yeah, there's a lot of thermonuclear war. If you just hit every single FPV development site, I'm sure you're not going to have any issues with them in the future. I guarantee you. Why is MAGA still cheering for Trump after all that happened? Because people are more emotional than logical or rational or reasonable. Um, you would think that the whole pedophilia thing, you would think them coming out, Cash Patel, all those people saying that they have the list and there's thousands of people and thousands of clients. You would think after that, you would think the right, especially, going so hard protecting kids with the whole abortion issue and all of that, you would think that the right would that see everything for what it is. But when you're dealing with ideologies, when you're dealing with politics, when you're dealing with people in general, you are going to run into this raw, illogical emotion that you will not be able to talk around. You will not be able to get through. It's like a cult of personality, right? It doesn't matter what Trump does. The way he's talking, he's all over those Epstein lists. Like your red flags should be going off, but some people would rather be happy and ignorant and it's so involved in what they're doing. It's like it's exact same as the Ukraine situation. How long did we watch people say, no, that's not happening, no, that's Russian propaganda, no this, no that, no, 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 and now all those people don't exist. They're not online anymore. I don't see them. All of the big pro-Ukrainian pages have shut down or sold out, or talking about other things, not talking about Ukraine anymore. What happened? Same goes for Trump, right? You're going to have the people that are going to leave. You have people like Dave Smith, who voted for Trump, who came out and now is now very vocal against him. You have a lot of people openly talking about how this is very bad and this is a horrid thing, for like, of all of the things to try to cover up, the thing you've been talking about specifically and using to get elected, the whole Epstein list, the JFK files, not sending money to Ukraine, no more foreign wars. How many times does he have to show you that he's just fucking lying? There's nothing else there. It's all it is. And it's not him. It's not just him. It's every other politician you see, every other one up there as well. And some of them are using this whole thing to say, look at how bad Trump is. Like Massey, like Thomas Massey. Like, I'm sure there are some politicians that aren't terrible, awful people, but in my experience and my limited political experience, no, but like when you're talking to people who get to these positions, when you're communicating with anybody who's hyper successful like this, in these cutthroat niche industries, or career choices like politics, like finance, like any of this, you're usually dealing with like near sociopaths or psychopaths, whatever, that just lack empathy and will lie because lying is easy, and it's who cares? Who cares? You can literally just lie about anything, and you still have 70-year-old boomers who think that Trump is the bee's knees, even though he's actively protecting pedophiles, right? Like, whatever you think about the Epstein file list, like in his own words, he is protecting people who hurt children. It's crazy that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself because there's no clients, there's no list. He just killed himself because of the thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of child pornography that he had on his computer that his wife helped him human traffic in. Who's sitting in prison for 20 years for a client list that doesn't exist. None of it's real. Neither of those people are even real. Go to sleep. You're retarded. That's what the government is telling you. They have the audacity to think you're that stupid. That's what's happening. Yeah, he was depressed. It was just a very convenient bout of depression. I think he actually got into prison, and they stopped giving him his prescription medication for his depression, his SSRIs, and he just got real sad. He just got real sad right before he was supposed to testify. Real sad, and hung himself. And then they release the footage. First off, they release jail footage, which is on a fucking shitty CCTV camera from the 90s. It could be any night. You just change the date at the bottom. I have no idea what night it is. I have no idea what happened in this prison. Nothing happens. They go up and look in the door, and still within this video they released, there's a whole goddamn minute missing. It is unbelievable. They did such a bad job of this. It's like something happened and our budget to make good fake things went away. Like, I believe we landed on the moon, but I also believe that we faked a lot of the moon landing footage for propaganda reasons. And we tried really hard with it. And then now we're just like, haha, fuck you. You thought we were being honest? Well, we weren't. And you're still just going to sit there and think it's okay or something, or not care enough about it to do anything. It's crazy. It wasn't even a cover up. It literally wasn't even, there was no cover. They said one thing, and then they came out and just said it doesn't exist. It's not even a cover up. A cover up would be like they release like thousands of hours of footage, and it's like of Jeffrey Epstein doing things, and it's like they make it look like it was mostly just him, and there might have been some other people, but they have no footage of that, and the client list isn't as clear, and nobody would believe it still, right? But at least you would be like, they're trying. At least they're trying to get. They were just like, no, it doesn't exist. Fuck you. Fuck you. You know that thing you voted us in for? My name's Kash Patel. Remember that thing that I said on every podcast 6 months leading up to this election? The reason that I'm the director of the FBI. Do you remember any of that? No? Good. Fuck you. That's what they just did. That's just what they did. It's hilarious. Oh, stop. If we haven't actually landed on the moon, why haven't we been back? We have. We've been back multiple times. You can shine a laser at the moon and actually see there's a thing on the moon that reflects lasers back. Also, the Indian space probe that went around the Indian lunar lander. I can't remember if it was just the one that went, the probe that went around, or the lunar lander from India actually took a picture of the original landing site. So it did happen. And yeah, but sorry, moon deniers. You believe we went to the moon? Fucking dork. When Mossad was offering Iranian VIPs, why do you think Iran didn't do the same? Was it not to escalate? I don't think they really have the capabilities. I think it's very hard to assassinate people. I think most of the assassinations you saw happened because the Israelis had ATGMs aimed at people's sleeping quarters, and they knew where their SIM cards and their phones were. I think it wasn't like Hezbollah where they were like hitting them in bunkers and shit. Most of those assassinations happened in the first hours before they even knew it was happening. It's really hard to assassinate people with missiles. It's really, really, really hard to do that. Unless you have like complete air dominance, like ballistic missiles, like people have time to get into shelters. You know, it's really hard to penetrate like a bomb shelter for that specific reason. All right, guys, that's where I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you so much for watching today's episode. A little off. I need to practice a little bit more, but just been not enough news to get on here and do a bunch of live streams about. So I love you all. Take care. Be safe. Have a fantastic weekend, and I will see you next week on the next one. Goodbye, guys.